Chicago Bears wide receiver arrested in a massive drug bust. Talking about Sam Hurd. He was
a guy who talked often about his Christian faith. Apparently was a good teammate and a loyal friend. But the aftershock of this Hurd arrest reverberating through two NFL locker rooms.
Everybody throughout this building is shocked by this revelation the other day.
After practice on December 14, 2011, Bears special teams captain Sam Hurd parked his black-tinted Escalade outside of Morton's, a local Chicago restaurant. The weather was overcast, drizzling a little, and of course, in Chicago, it was windy as ever. Most NFL players would take this time to recover and get ready for game day, but not Sam Hurd. Hurd entered the restaurant and sat down with two cartel members and had a conversation that would nearly get him life in prison. He was looking to increase the supply that he was already pushing, and in the words of Hurd, quantity was always a problem for him. Hurd thought that after this meeting he would finally become the kingpin of Chicago, but in reality, his life would change in an unimaginable way. How did Sam Hurd get involved in this terrifying business? Is Sam Hurd guilty? What exactly did Sam Hurd do? But most importantly, did Sam Hurd actually get set up by his childhood best friend? This is the dark story of Sam Hurd. Break! Sam Hurd was born on April 24th, 1985 in San Antonio, Texas, specifically Denver Heights in San Antonio. When Sam Hurd was growing up, violence was commonplace, and during the 1990s, San Antonio was the drive-by capital of the United States. On a day-to-day basis, Hurd could see flashy dealers on the corner waiting for their newest customer to walk by. He could hear gunshots regularly throughout the week, but in 2004, Sam Hurd even had to endure losing his own uncle, Jimmy Corbin, in a drive-by shooting just because he was a small-time drug dealer. If all this wasn't enough to convince Hurd that the streets were a dangerous vice that needed to be left behind, even his own mother, Miss Gloria, as the neighborhood kids learned to call her, tried her very best to keep Hurd from walking down the same path. She sheltered Sam Hurd during his childhood so he didn't meet the wrong people, and she even found the Breckenridge High School Booster Club, which still exists today. The club pulls together money to help support players and teams that might not have the funds to compete at a high level. Not only did she find the Booster Club, but Miss Gloria also volunteered at the concession stand during football games to help give back to the community. Growing up in high school, Sam Hurd was a model citizen. Hurd was a great kid and stood out more so in school than on the football field. His first 2 seasons playing football, he wasn't even on the varsity team, and in his junior season, he barely made the team. Hurd wasn't even 6 foot, and as a result, he didn't get that much attention during his junior season. You have to remember, this isn't New Hampshire. This is Texas high school football, some of the most competitive low-level football on the planet. As the dreams of possibly making the NFL as a pro player seemingly faded away after Sam's junior season, they came back relatively fast, but not as fast as the growth spurt that Sam Hurd endured that launched him all the way to 6'2". Hurd grew nearly 5 inches in one summer, and now that he had the physical tools to match his overflowing talent, Hurd finally became a superstar. He played both basketball and track on the side, and also dominated those sports as well, but not as much as he dominated on the football field. In his senior season alone, Hurd posted 60 receptions for over 1,600 receiving yards and 23 touchdowns. This breakout season would earn Hurd not only his first All-State selection as a wide receiver, but a full-ride scholarship to Illinois University. For Sam Hurd, this must have been a dream. In 1 year, Hurd went from stressing about taking out college loans to a full-time Division I college athlete, a turnaround that is almost unheard of. But first, before attending Illinois, Hurd had one last event to enjoy with his hometown friends, his senior prom. Hurd, like any young kid, didn't just want to show up to prom in a 1999 Subaru Outback. As a result, Hurd looked to his cousin Tyrone. Tyrone, like Sam, also played sports in high school and was somewhat of a star himself. himself. But unlike Hurd, he didn't use his physical talents to his advantage. Tyrone pushed drugs in San Antonio, mainly the devil's lettuce, and as a result had acquired some shiny new toys, a few jet skis, some fresh new clothes, and oh yeah, a personalized, lifted, tricked out Ford Expedition. Hurd would ask to borrow his Expedition, but while out having fun with his friends, Hurd had managed to accidentally hit something that caused a small dent in the car. Despite the mark, the cousin he didn't know very well didn't mind and let it go. But now that Hurd had finished high school and had a phenomenal senior season to boot, he was finally ready to start his Division I collegiate career. However, that connection he would make with his cousin Tyrone would follow him for the rest of his life. Sam Hurd's college career for the first 3 seasons was lackluster. He never recorded more than 3 touchdowns in a year. He never had more than 520 receiving yards, and in fact, he would hit a career low with less than 300 receiving yards in the entirety of his season. Hurd at this point was just happy to be on a Division I team. One time while visiting his hometown during Thanksgiving break, to his surprise, Sam had talked to his cousin Tyrone. This was special because Tyrone was serving 8 years in prison for marijuana-related charges. Tyrone had given Sam 2 pounds of the devil's lettuce to take back to Northern Illinois after Thanksgiving break, but not to sell, not to push, just to enjoy. This would be the beginning of Sam Hurd's fondness towards the green stuff. Hurd's career didn't tank even further after this. As a matter of fact, it skyrocketed. In his senior season, Hurd would put up over 1,000 yards receiving, 65 receptions, and a mind-blowing 13 touchdowns in 12 games. Hurd was also a coveted member of Illinois special teams. After his collegiate career, Sam tried to stay away from the devil's lettuce as he declared for the 2006 NFL draft. His wife Stacy and him had just married, and despite going undrafted, Hurd was signed as an undrafted free agent to his hometown Dallas Cowboys. Things seemed to be going really well in Sam Hurd's life. He made it to the NFL, and he even got to play in his home state for one of the most lucrative franchises in the entire world. At nearly 6'3" now, Hurd was a priority undrafted free agent, but he chose to sign with the Dallas Cowboys. At the start of minicamp, not many people knew who Sam Hurd was, except for the coaching staff, of course, but as camp went on, number 17 just kept making play after play, and soon, Sam Hurd was a name every Dallas Cowboys fan knew going into the season. Hurd caught just 5 footballs for 75 yards, but mainly made his impact on special teams. Hurd made 15 tackles, 12 of them being solo tackles, and even managed to recover 2 fumbles. After his rookie season was a fan favorite. Everyone knew the lanky special teams wideout who hustled on every single play he was given. And as a result, in 2007, Sam Hurd was given his own 2-minute YouTube show called Sam Cam, where he would interview some of his teammates, some big names being Terrell Owens, Jason Witten, and safety Patrick Watkins, the same player who would eventually make trips with Hurd to California to buy pounds and pounds of the devil's lettuce. But to be honest, some of these interviews are even quite enjoyable, especially for 2007. Check it out.
I seen you come down, and yesterday you was talking noise like you wanted to hit me. What happened? Why didn't you hit me today?
Coach Phillips told us to lay off the receivers. As you probably already know, we have been knocking the crap out of the receivers, added that. But today I seen Sam also drop a lot of passes, so, I didn't want to break his confidence in him anymore.
Lies.
In his second season, Hurd didn't just make an impact on special teams, he also finally made it to the offensive squad. He was targeted nearly 40 times for just under 20 receptions, 314 yards, and the first receiving touchdown of his career. He was training with Terrell Owens after practice nearly every day. Now, Owens is one of the game's best wide receivers in recent memory, and he helped Hurd get better at route running, ball skills, and receiving in general. In fact, Bill Parcells even said that Sam Hurd learned all 3 receiver positions, the X, the Y, and the Z, by the 3rd day of rookie camp. The 3rd day! I don't think you understand how difficult it is to memorize 3 times the amount of material for a wide receiver to learn just for the opportunity to be able to be plugged in at each one of those positions. Parcells said this was the first time he'd ever seen a player learn as fast as Sam Hurd did. And this was something that Bill Parcells kept in mind going into 2008. After the the departure of veteran Terry Glenn, Parcells penciled in Hurd as the starter right next to Terrell Owens. However, before the season could even start, Sam Hurd would sprain his ankle, solidifying 2008 as a rehab season. In 2008, Sam Hurd had to watch Miles Austin put up over 1,300 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns, and as a result, get a beautiful $54 million payday, all while Sam was sitting at home on the couch rehabbing his injury. And all of this would push Sam Hurd to revisit a habit that he decided to leave behind. Hurd was smoking so much marijuana from California that he finally met the man growing it. His name was V. Unlike what many believe, this isn't where his drug dealing had started. You see, Hurd didn't sell the weed at a profit. He was just selling it for the same price so he could break even. In fact, if players just didn't pay for the weed, Hurd would let it slide. He didn't care. He clearly at first wasn't in it to make money, just to have fun and potentially help his teammates, maybe form some new relationships and an ability to bond with his teammates. But Hurd would smoke the green stuff every hour of every day. In fact, the only comparable person who smoked as much as him was probably Bob Marley himself. After the 2009 and 2010 seasons, Hurd never developed into the superstar receiver he knew he was capable of becoming. But that didn't matter because he was content with the role he was in. Hurd, a valuable special teams member, could even play a little wide receiver when the coaches asked him to. But after the 2010 season, Sam Hurd was a free agent. But before he could sign a contract, the NFL lockout would begin. This is when Hurd's real problems started arising. Remember Patrick Watkins, the safety that Hurd had befriended and even interviewed on his YouTube show? Well, in 2011, on July 1st, before the start of the NFL season and during the lockout, Watkins and Hurd, along with a local drug dealer named Capri, flew out to California to meet V, the individual that was growing the stuff. At that moment, Hurd would make a business decision, spending $55,000 on the devil's lettuce, and after getting home, would soon fly back on July 5th just to spend another $50,000 extra on product. Hurd admitted that later on, anything under 5 pounds was simply considered to be a low amount to him. Throughout the month of July, Hurd would continue to buy more and more marijuana from V, up until July 20th. The NFL lockout was finally coming to a halt, so Sam Hurd demanded that V would hurry up with his shipments. Before any deal could be made, V and his colleagues were arrested on July 25th in their hotel rooms and were found with cocaine and trace amounts of marijuana. They also found a phone number on V's phone that belonged to Sam Hurd. Instead of bailing them out himself, he sent one of his friends to bail them out instead so that he couldn't be connected to the crime. However, I'm sure you guys would know, at this point, it didn't matter. Like I said, the police had already found Sam Hurd's number on V's phone. That's all they really needed. And as a result, they saw all the text messages between V and Sam Hurd, even the demanding texts he sent just days prior to the arrest. You'd be forgiven if you thought that this was the end of the story, but it gets so much worse. However, an old face from his childhood reeled him right back in, and into even deeper water. Toby Lujan played high school football with Sam Hurd. He worked and ended up purchasing an auto shop in Dallas, Texas. The pair grew fond of one another and had a tight-knit friendship. Toby had told Sam about his cousin who could flip his money if he just gave him a chance. This should have been another red flag, but unfortunately, no alarm bells would ring for Sam Hurd yet. With the $88,000 Sam had set aside to buy his mother a house in San Antonio, he instead gave it to Toby to help flip it into even more money. Toby later on in court would pin all of this on Hurd, saying Hurd was the one who asked about flipping the money. Toby would not only take the $88,000, but would also take Hurd's Escalade that needed repairs. While driving his Escalade to the shop, Toby Lujan was pulled over, and once cops saw the large bag of money in the back seat, the money was confiscated because the cops had found specks of cannabis on the bag as well. Toby immediately caved in and told the police the bag and car were a football player's by the name of Sam Hurd, and that he had nothing to do with any of this. Toby was let go by the police, but not before they confiscated the bag and downloaded the contents of his phone. Toby immediately called Hurd and told him everything, even giving Hurd the card of the officer who pulled them over in order for him to get his money back. Hurd called the officer and arranged a meeting for Hurd to pick up his cash. The very next day, day, Sam Hurd arrived at the address, which turned out to be an ICE headquarters, not the police station. He tried to tell the officers the money was for his mom's house. The officers did not care and kept the bag of money. The same day Sam Hurd inked his deal with the Bears was the same day that Toby called his cousin back, furious that he could no longer make the deal. His cousin, whose name is Manuel, insisted Toby not to worry and that they would all make their money back in due time. A weird thing for a drug dealer to be so chill about. So as a result, Manuel wanted to talk to Sam over the phone. For months, things were quiet. Hurd was doing his thing with the Chicago Bears, and the police were struggling to find any more evidence to solidify the case. And things were looking like they were finally about to die down. However, in mid-November, Toby received yet another call from Manuel asking if they wanted to finally get a deal done. But later, Toby confessed to Manuel that he had lost Sam's $88,000 in the past. Hurd, if asked in August, would have probably hung up the phone. However, after a botched $20,000 marijuana deal with the Dallas dealer named Capri, Sam Hurd was 6 figures in the hole and wanted to make his money back. The two would agree to meet in Chicago just a week later. In December of 2011, Manuel landed in Chicago. He called Hurd to arrange a meeting. Hurd initially asked to meet at his suburban home. However, Manuel pushed for a public meeting spot, and they ended up choosing Morton's restaurant. This again should have been a major red flag. After arriving at the restaurant, Hurd sat down and for 77 minutes talked about the long partnership he intended on forming with Manuel and his cousin Juan, who was also present at the meeting. But something was off. Just one table over, there were some men dressed in suits, but something about them seemed familiar to Hurd. But nonetheless, after the 77 minutes were up, the trio came to an agreement, and Hurd walked off with a happy birthday bag that Manuel had brought in with them. Inside the bag was a kilo of coke the trio had agreed to give Hurd to test the waters. After being told to pick up the bag himself, reluctantly took the bag and walked out the restaurant. As soon as Sam Hurd entered his Escalade, police showed up and surrounded his vehicle and promptly arrested him. Soon after, his friend Toby was also arrested. Toby placed the blame all on Hurd, and since Hurd was the first person to compromise with the police, he got a deal with the DEA. So how did the police arrest Sam Hurd so quickly? How did they know all of this? Toby wasn't just pulled over by accident. They were looking for his car specifically. Manuel wanted to talk to Sam so badly because the phones were tapped. The men were never in a cartel, and the reason the men at the restaurant looked so familiar was because they were the same ICE agents that Hurd had spoken with back in Dallas. From the very beginning, Sam Hurd was set up to be caught. He had no chance of succeeding no matter what he did. He was set up for failure in every way imaginable. After being let off on bail, Sam Hurd was released by the Chicago Bears, and him and his family moved back to Texas, where they would live with Sam Hurd's sister. However, while on probation, Hurd would receive a call from his cousin Tyrone. Tyrone was calling because he needed money to help pay for a shipment of drugs, and Hurd, being the person that he was, didn't want to let Tyrone down, a family member who he had owed a favor to since his senior year. However, the men Tyrone was making the deal with ended up being informants, and despite all evidence pointing toward Tyrone just randomly calling Sam one day, Tyrone told the police that Sam Hurd was his partner the whole time. In addition to Tyrone ratting on him, remember Capri? The local Dallas drug dealer who went to California with Hurd a few times? Well, he was arrested on unrelated cocaine trafficking charges, but the minute he was given a chance, he blamed it all on Sam Hurd. The reason Capri and Tyrone blamed Sam? Well, unlike Tyrone and Capri, Sam didn't have a criminal record. The only thing he had ever been arrested for was a fight in college. But Sam and Tyrone? Well, both of them were felons who had done hard time before, and they knew that if they had any information on a high-profile person, even if it was fake information, it would get them time off of their sentences. Despite the evidence, he was still charged in those cases as well. Sam Hurd, when asked about this, simply said, "Sentence me for what I did, moving weed and getting caught up in this stupid coke thing with Toby. I am ready and eager to be sentenced fairly for those things. They have hurt my family and they will continue to hurt us. All this other stuff though, don't you think if I really did that, I would have confessed and gotten my sentence knocked down as soon as they started talking about life in prison?" Sam Hurd, in his junior year of high school, didn't even know if he'd play college football and ended up having a 6-year NFL career. And for that, no one can say that he failed at playing football. However, what they can say is he definitely ended up playing his career short. Hurd, to this day, says his deal with Manuel was intended not to make him money, but to help Toby make his own cash. At the same time, is that true? Sam Sam Hurd was sentenced to 15 years in prison and is set to be released on May 17th, 2025, just 3 years from now. Hurd says he has no bad feelings towards the men that used him as a scapegoat, saying, "It does me no good to hold ill will towards Toby, Capri, and Tyrone. Am I comfortable with the idea of going away for life? Of course not. I think about it all the time. But it does me and my family no good if I go around mean mugging people or trying to get vengeance. I pray for those guys." In prison, he met and talked with former Rams cornerback Darrell Henley, who is also in prison for cocaine trafficking charges. So is Sam Hurd really a kingpin who helped Capri, Tyrone, and Toby set up their own business and then try to set up his own in Chicago? Or, more likely, was Sam Hurd just trying to get his friend Toby a decent income and in the process got in way above his head, and in the end got blamed for a bunch of other things he didn't do? Legally, it's the first one, but in reality, we'll never know.